I'm Malcolm Nance, and welcome to Black Man Spy, the U.S. Iran Warcast Geopolitical Cast, Day 67. Now, despite Donald Trump saying that we are no longer at war, and technically the warcast needs to change and become the peace cast. Unfortunately, the laws of war don't work that way. The Geneva Convention doesn't work that way. The United States, even though it is claiming to Congress that it is no longer in a state of armed conflict, remains in a state of armed conflict because U.S. forces even that are at a ceasefire and they are carrying out blockading operations on Iran, which, according to the international laws, is an act of war. So we are
Mhm.
still in operations in Iran. Congress has not said that we are at a position of peace, even though Trump tries to believe that, and spoke about it last night and called it we're at war. So who knows? Well, good morning. Well, I'm Malcolm Nance. And with me today, usually is Jacob Kaarsbo, Danish intelligence officer extraordinaire, but he has a day off as his son is a professional football player, soccer player, and he is at a game cheering him on. So Jacob can have all the time off he wants there.
Right.
But on the other hand, we have Wajeeh, the gay lion, Saudi Arabian Middle East expert, Gulf mindset expert, and all around great guy. And with that being said, good morning, Waji.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. It is every day is a new day, and every day with Trump is kind of a new nightmare.
Well, I'm glad every day is a new day. Well, you're right about the nightmare part. So that being said, hey, what kind of coffee cup you're mugging? You're sporting because I see you have your Nehru hat back on, and you're still with that Italian mug. You need to get down to the home to the five and dime or the Goodwill and like get 20 or 30
I
mugs.
get to go to the spy coffee, the spy coffee shop that you keep telling me about.
Oh, Spy House.
Yeah, I need to go there.
Love Spy House. That's what they refer to my house as sometimes. So, oh, watch. And Marnie says you're wonderful. You got so many fans. That's amazing. Well, me, I am holed up in a hotel, but a hotel with some very, very fancy schmancy Nespresso coffee cups. You can see I've already had my 30th coffee for the day. So my Nespresso coffee mugs are in operation. So, mm, and I tried this morning to get some Illy or Lavazza coffee K cups to go into my espresso machine, but I couldn't
Mm.
find that. So I'm running around. I'm actually still on my secret mission in which I am going around, but you're going to see some of the benefits of that. I will be having a very special version of the Black Man Spy podcast, which goes onto YouTube. Before it goes onto YouTube, it will be edited and I will post it on Substack for our paid subscribers. It is a private tour of a historical, actually, right now, I'm already at 3 historical locations in the history of World War II and spies in the Special Operations Executive. Some of you may know, if you follow me on the podcast, I am an amateur historian of the Special Operations Executive, which was the British spy agency designed to set Europe on fire through sabotage and secret spy rings, and the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, the predecessor to the CIA that was partnered with the SOE and also the SIS, the Secret Intelligence Service, or MI6. And there are many other groups out there as well. Every year I do a tour in Egypt, a very high end tour in which I give a in depth, multi week tour of the origins of the Special Air Service, the SAS, the Long Range Desert Group, and the SOE in the beginning of World War II. And we go all over Egypt. That's super fun. So, that being said, um, it is a weekend day. We tend to go very long in this program. Today, I can't, especially for those of you you're watching on YouTube. You can watch this all you want because we're going to go all the way to the end. For those of you on Substack, about 5 minutes uh, to 10 o'clock, I have to drop off because you can watch me on the Save America Movement podcast, which will be live streamed through my Substack, and I will be on with Steve Schmidt, political analyst extraordinaire, Sarah Palin Wrangler, and I will also be on with generally Ken Harland, for who is a former U.S. Navy pilot, and Ken Harbaugh, sorry, as former U.S. Navy pilot and political analyst also. And what we do is once a week, we get out there and we go over everything. And believe me, I do a lot more shouting on that show than I do on this show because Steve Schmidt knows how to wind me up. All right. And then he goes, "What do you think, Malcolm?" And I'm like, "Arr." So that's generally how this goes. So it is Sunday morning. I want to give you guys some time off. We also want to get through all the questions we missed yesterday because I had unstable. I still am going through the saga of T-Mobile. I do not have stable overseas international data, and then my program cut on me yesterday afternoon. Even though I could hear it, I could hear all of you. So let's go on to it this morning. Wajeeh, any change in the casualty counts in
Uh,
the Middle East?
no, there is no casualty update, but I can prepare to give you the oil update here. Let me turn off the
Okay,
screen.
hit us with the
I
oil.
can't turn off the screen because it's usually a nightmare.
Now, don't forget, Trump announced Friday afternoon before the markets closed that the war was over. So that should have
Yep.
an impact on oil. Not much. A little,
Just,
a little.
just
West
tiny.
Texas Intermediate is at 101.94, down $3.13. Brent North Sea crude's at 108.17, down $2, and I can't read that. So 20 some odd cents. And Murban crude is holding steady at 103.
Yep.
And that downward spiral is part of Trump's pretty much predictable Friday afternoon manipulation of the markets. So we generally we're going to hear that anyway. Okay, let's get on to significant activities of the day so that we can finish early and all of you can go have a nice Sunday morning and stop thinking about crazy ass politics because it is crazy. Oh, someone says, yeah, Trump is claiming gas is going down 600%, right? Oh, absolutely not. Significant activities. Wajeeh, I'll let you talk about the peace plan because the number of points in that peace plan fluctuates. Iran says 15, Trump says 9, whatever. But the most significant activity that we didn't report yesterday is that Kuwait, one of the largest oil producers in the world for such a tiny country. And I know I helped liberate Kuwait. I have been through every inch of Kuwait from east to west, north to south. Not a big country. Kuwait announced that it is now, for the first time in 30 years, at 0% export of oil. Zero. They are not exporting oil. They've shut off everything. They're bunkering what they have, and it's going to get bad for them. This happened in Desert Storm when the country was invaded and Iraq was stealing the oil. Kuwait, of course, obviously wasn't pumping any oil out at that time. Kuwait has an enormous number of investment incomes around the world. If any of you ever seen the gas station Q, as in the letter Q, and the number 8, that is Kuwaiti National Oil Company, Q8. And they're in here in the United Kingdom. I've seen them in a couple in the United States. They have them in Europe. They have other investments out there, but they are, for the most part, stopping officially None of that oil's coming to the market for the foreseeable future. And when they put these places into stasis, right? These oil pumping facilities, they start to degrade. And that means that makes startup all the much harder. So Kuwait is now at a 0% export because of the blockade that's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. They can't bunker that stuff. They're just not pumping now. Oh, Wajeeh, what can you tell us about the Iran peace plan?
Well, the most three important things from the U.S. perspective, it is the nuclear disarmament, the ballistic missile degradation, and the sanctions relief, uh, lifting the U.S. Uh, sanctions and mostly also basically opening up the U.S. side of the blockade. That's what the U.S. is going to give and what they're demanding, like their biggest 3 points. I know there's 10, but they're all like the other parts are like negotiable. They're not playing as serious part as the other. Like those, the 3 points I'm just giving you now are what is going to play the largest part in the negotiation. From the Iranian perspective, they have a little bit more than that. They have they're demanding immediate sanctions neutralization. They're
Mhm.
demanding that all their allies and their proxies would be included in the peace talks and would
Interesting.
be included and under their protection. So even after the peace talks, that their proxies would be able to operate as they are without any interference from from foreign nations.
Mhm.
They're also demanding that and that's why I'm saying this is the biggest part. They're demanding that they will not going to lose the ability to uh not only like refine nuclear materials, but
Enrich it.
also enriching. No, they want to do both. They want to they want to be able to, because they have nuclear material, they just need to dig it out
Process
of the
nuclear
ground.
materials, like turn
They
yellow
want
cake
to,
into uranium.
yes, and then they want to enrich that uranium to a higher material. And if they're going to do anything, they said the enriched uranium we are willing to dilute, but we are not willing to send that uranium to Russia or anywhere else
Right.
because that's what they did last time with the
Yeah.
Obama administration.
Yeah, in 2015, part of the JCPOA was they gave up 200 tons of yellow cake and recyclable uranium materials that came out of nuclear power plants. And that was off country. That was off sited to Russia. And that
Yep.
was Russia's part. They took that material and neutralized it. And then all the remaining uranium was supposed to be a maximum of 3.5% enrichment. Now, of course, Iran started creating centrifuges so that they could rapidly enrich it if they wanted to. And they did when Donald Trump tore up the JCPOA. Iran was like, no problem.
Okay.
Now we can enrich. So they went from 3.5% under Obama to 60% under Trump.
Yeah.
Shot ourselves in the foot, which is what we're very good at doing. Okay. So that's the components of the peace plan. Trump is still saying that he's going to keep the blockade going. I was just reading a report on Israel Real Time. And the reason I read that is because they seem to get a lot more of these indications from Barak Ravid and others in Israel than we get in the United States. And they're saying now Trump has had that meeting about the military commanders and that not general, the admiral in charge of Central Command has gone to the White House and has now returned to his flagship in the Indian Ocean in preparation for Fergent Yuri. I don't know what the name was going to be. Epic Dude Bro 2.0, whatever the name is going to be, for the second Iranian war. Go figure. The war is technically still on. And based on what Barack Ravid is telling people, and he is the official mouthpiece of the White House, he's telling people that the United States now wants to destroy, in a series of strikes, Iran's last 15% of building of ballistic missile production facilities. They estimate that they've destroyed 85%, and now Trump is saying he wants to go after that final 15%. They completely keep forgetting that the war just restarts. Ballistic missiles will start raining down all over the Gulf states, U.S. bases, all the rest of it.
I said this in my Q&A yesterday after we had the podcast. I said there's a reason why everyone is not taking a stupid decision right now in terms of military, because the United States and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates all have miscalculated the Iranian capability of owning the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's capability of using cheap drones, even though they were struck over and over and over again. So, the United States has used half of their precise missile capabilities, and now they're going, hold on, hold on. I've used half of what I got in 30 days. Maybe I should slow down a minute. Maybe I shouldn't have my ship in the middle of the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, because if I get hit by any of those drones, it's too expensive for me to replace any of my. Maybe I should be staying at the Gulf of Oman, a little bit further, a couple hundred miles away, or like a little bit further away.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't strike Iran's oil facility, because the Gulf nations will be pissed off at me because Iran will be hitting the Gulf oil facilities. Maybe the Gulf ain't. So everyone just realized they're all in deep shit. So everyone's like slowing down, but they're all talking big game. Everyone's talking big game, but everyone's afraid of making a stupid decision because
Yep.
they all got a lot to lose. They all realize I got a lot to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
That's for
all right,
sure.
ready.
Well, no one, the White House is signaling that they don't want to restart negotiations. They like this passing notes under the chairs of the elementary school between, with the intermediate in Pakistan. So don't look forward to any peace negotiations. But by Trump making this fake ass announcement that the war is over, could be interesting to see the markets on Monday when they figure out that it ain't over. In other news, Iraq, we talked about this a few days ago. Now it is in full swing. The Iraq truck bridge going through Syria and is now reaching the port of Tartus in Syria, and then being unloaded into tankers. They say 70 trucks a day are showing up, which you got to drive all the way across Syria. These big 1,000-gallon tankers. Still small money, but it shows you the money is out there, even in a truck of oil. You're selling that on the spot market, it's probably $200 a barrel. Easily, no problem. In other words, another news, the United States took a poll, and 61% of
Wait,
Americans.
could I ask you a question about the
Oh,
oil that's going through Syria?
yeah.
Is it going for people inside Syria, or is it going for people across the border?
Going to Tartus, and it's going to be put on tankers and exported.
Okay,
None of
thank
this
you.
is going to Syria. Syria has its own tiny little oil fields in the KDP, the Kurdish occupied areas of the Northeast. But this is Iraqi oil that can't get through the Gulf. They're doing a conga line of trucks going all the way across the country.
That makes sense.
All right. Now, significant news, 61% of Americans believe the war with Iran was a mistake. That's going to make Trump excited. And less than 30% of Republicans of 30% MAGA believe that it wasn't. So, what is that? That's 6 out of 10 Americans believe it was a mistake. 3 believe that it wasn't, and 1's probably undecided.
Damn.
Okay, let's shift now away from the Middle East because, as you can see, the significant activities aren't particularly significant. They're happening, they're small ball. Europe, on the other side, we have Europe and Ukraine. If you haven't checked it out yet, go to the Atlantic. There's a great article because Vladimir Zelensky has come to the realization that Ukraine can no longer depend on the United States for anything,
That's
and that
right.
they are essentially just realizing nothing's coming to them. They aren't asking for anything anymore. They're getting their intelligence from the French. They have a dedicated satellites, all these things. The United States materials that were ordered by other countries, the U.S. isn't delivering. And they know that this stuff was purchased by Poland. The U.S. isn't even delivering to Poland. Stuff was purchased by Estonia.
Baby, Ukraine has become independent. They're now making security deals with the GCC. They're
They
making
are.
money. They're making bank. They don't care about the USA anymore.
They don't have to, but it's shocking that Zelensky had to come to that realization that because of Donald Trump, you cannot depend on America anymore. So now we're just a bunch of traitorous assholes. In other news of Europe, the European Union has decided to create, our European body has decided to create a European Defense Union, which will be an alliance of the United Kingdom, Ukraine as the lead force in Europe, the United Kingdom, some of the Nordic states, France, who will essentially create their own version of NATO strictly to support Ukraine. And that could be interesting, especially if they come up with their own charter, which says that if one of these nations is attacked, the others have to come to their defense. All right, that's it for Europe. Not a lot going on. It was a slow news day, but in Africa, in the Africa Command region, the United States every year carries
Actually,
out an
about NATO,
exercise.
question I received yesterday. I want your opinion on it, if you don't mind.
Well, wait, is
Uh,
this about Africa?
NATO.
Hold it for question and answer period because I want to get through this. Because don't forget, I got to go off a little early.
Okay.
So, first, every year we hold an exercise, a joint operations exercise called African Lion. This year it was held in Morocco in a town called Tantan on Cape Bras. I have been down there. If you drive from Agadir and go all the way in the desert south, there's a tiny little village on the sea called Imlit, which is nice, very nice. I knew an Italian guy who had a house on the water there. And then you go back into the desert and you drive all the way south for 2 or 3 more hours. You'll hit a town called Tantan, not the cartoon Belgian. Tantan, not Tintin, Tintin, Tantan, even though they're both pronounced the same. There to the east is Cape Dra, right? Cape Dra is where this exercise was occurring. It was a joint force operation between Morocco, Ghana, Senegal, Tunisia. The U.S. forces that were there assisting in this exercise were the Utah National Guard, and more specifically, a medical team and a cyber/drone operations group. And they also run like a little, NCO academy for these various people. Apparently, 2 U.S. service members drove out into the desert as part of these exercises and has disappeared. Right now, there is a massive operation underway to try to find them. This was not part of the exercise, even though they're flying American and French-made drones. They're large-scale drones. This was not part of the exercise to try to find these people. I don't know if you guys have ever been in the Sahara Desert. I have been in the Sahara Desert. It is insanely swelteringly hot during the daytime, as it is said. This place where they're at is Urg. It's rolling sand dunes. It is not flat. Most of the Sahara is flat and rocky. right? But you do have those giant Sahara sand dunes like you see in the movies. They got lost. No one knows where they're at. They are considered missing in action right now, or missing service personnel, and the entire exercise is stopped to try to find them before they die. Now, having been in that part of the world, they should have had this in their truck: a case of water. Fuck that. Two cases of water, right? One
You,
case of MREs and a way to start a fire, and signal mirrors and orange panels. And wherever they got stuck, they should have just stopped and not moved and made signals. So that's all we know. Africa Command is saying that the entire exercise is now shifted to a search and rescue operation.
that's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, it
Uh,
happened.
no, no, I'm talking about like the fact that I don't know, I'm not in the military. Because when we go in the desert and we're Saudis, right? We either have some sort of GPS or we go with a tracker, with someone that guide us through the desert,
Right.
someone, a desert expert that is familiar with the ways of the sand. And also you talked about water. You know that like big 20-gallon oil
Ice
thing?
coolers. Yeah, yeah.
Those are the ones that you're supposed to drink, and you're supposed to finish one a day per
Mhm.
person in the desert. So that just to give you an idea, like how much water you need to be drinking. If you don't have the right cooling clothes that will
Right.
like shield you from the sun and slow the amount of your sweat, or convert your sweat into cooling.
Yeah.
The reason we dress the way we dress is so we can stay cool in the midst of all that.
Mhm.
Um, I pray for their safety, and I hope that they're found.
The biggest accidents that we generally have are rollover accidents, right? Where they could be navigating a sand dune, they're not putting enough juice on it, and they turn to try to come parallel to the top ridge of the sand dune and try to. By the way, when I lived in Abu Dhabi for 10 years, I drove manual Land Rover Defenders down 200-foot bowls, right? Down to
That's
the bottom, and then had to hit the bottom, change into low gear, and then spin my way all the way up around the top. And I always got stuck. So, we had convoys. We were jerking each other out of the ridges and down these mountains. So it's very dangerous. Okay. That being
it's
said,
also fun.
in Mali, the Russians, apparently in a northern town called, I believe the name's Gamia, has conducted a counterattack with Malian forces, which is a surprise considering that at Gadi, the other base that they were operating at, they abandoned the Malian forces, cut a private deal with the terrorists, and just left them to be executed, die, whatever. So that there is some counterattack activity going on in Mali, but it's by the Russians. How good is that going to be? Okay, that being said, Wajeeh, that is all of the significant activities of the day. Now we're going to go to questions.
Let's
Just give
do
me a
it.
moment. I just got to grab my questions here in my other phone. All right, we had some questions yesterday. I want to answer those real quick. Uh, bu- 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 bu. Okay, JP Holden asked yesterday, Malcolm, do you have any worries about getting back into the US after traveling? No, I'm flying back to Canada. And then I will come back through the US border, and I have Nexus. And Nexus has been pretty good. We'll have to see. Coming back on Nexus at an international airport, that's a different animal. Murphy's friend says, since the war was not clinically defined by Congress, how can service members get awards, ribbons, and medals, even combat pay? They can, right? It doesn't have to be a WAR. It can still be an action or an operation. Jane Matei says, are U.S. forces withdrawing from the theater? No. We are not seeing any evidence of U.S. forces withdrawing from the Middle East theater. Lynette LeBlanc yesterday asked, what do you think about his comment, Trump, that we really don't need a deal? No, he needs a deal. And everything I have ever seen shows that Trump is desperate. Because remember his thing, Mr. I wrote the book, Art of the Deal, which he didn't even write that book, right? So he desperately needs a deal. Nancy Byman says, is piracy an act of war? Well, technically, yes, but we'd have to see how that's going to shake out.
Mm.
Next, Michael Matson today says, Malcolm, is the blockade working? Yes, it is working ish, right? Ships are
For
getting
who?
by. They are attempting mass breakouts, but it's an enormous amount of space. It's the entire, I've said this before, the entire Iranian coastline's 650 nautical miles across. And going from the Strait of Hormuz to Chabahar all the way in the east is like 500 miles. I mean, it's crazy. Oh, I'm sorry.
If you don't mind,
Mm.
you're right. The Strait of the blockade is working, but the real question is working for whom?
Yeah,
Is it working for the Americans or is it working for the Iranians? The
Trump.
Iranians might be getting some struggles from this economy, but they don't give a damn about how their people is struggling, especially because they consider jihad and for other things and a suppressive regime. But the United States is not able. The rest of the global economy, they're the ones getting their ass whooped.
Yep. Which brings me to the next point. Larrabee, I'm sorry, says, I heard on the news today that China will not recognize sanctions on Iranian oil. That means they're on the market. They're ready to buy. If it was recognized that they'd always received oil from the shadow fleet, so this is just a way for China to thumb their nose at the U.S., or will it make a difference otherwise? The lack of oil is making a difference on everybody, but China is hoarding. They have like 6 months of oil hoarded. That is going to make a difference on your Walmart purchases, as all those little plastic trinkets and bullshit that you like, they're going to go up in price.
Mhm.
Surprise. Diane K. Oh yeah, she just mentioned of the two soldiers missing in Morocco during African Lion. Oh, and not opposed, not as exciting as the gay lion, but still there. Jeff Kamen says, was Trump's war plan subjected to standard red team analysis? It looks like there was no thought or second or third tier impacts like the families which have to be triggered. Yeah, you're right. I'm certain it was done at the Pentagon level, that these studies and red teaming happened at the Pete Hegseth, right? Dudes with guns and bros attitude. They just didn't give a fuck. That they took the minesweepers out 3 months before the war showed that they didn't care. They were assured by someone that we had capability. And then when the war started, they were like, get those ships out of here and send them to Singapore because they'll just get sunk. It's just awful. No, at the operational level, yes. At the execution political level, no. There was no red teaming. It was like, they'll surrender because we're awesome. He-Man. Will Satire says, can you instruct us on territorial jurisdiction and law of the sea? No, because that is just too broad to be going under UNCLOS, United Nations Treaty on Law of the Sea. But I know someone who is an expert named Bill Cunningham, great guy, former CIA officer, former federal prosecutor, and lawyer. And he talks about law of the sea. So what I'll do is I will arrange for us to have a Substack paid subscribers for you guys who are asking these questions to come in there and ask all your questions about law of the sea, government sanctioned piracy, letters of marque, why pirates wear patches over their eyes, everything. How much does it cost for the Gulf countries in average to produce a barrel of oil? Well, obviously less than it does to actually sell it on the market. But it doesn't matter. If it costs you $1 to produce a barrel of oil and it can't leave that barrel, and that barrel just sits there, your oil is worthless. That's why the Saudis are pumping hard through Yanbu. The Iraqis are putting it on trucks. The Emiratis are working hard to get the Habshan Fujairah oil pipeline working again so that oil can get out there. And then it's valuable. It's more valuable than gold. Ah. Rick Horlet says, is there any way to track a cumulative true cost, including losses to facilities and munitions? Yes, there are think tanks out there. I believe the Center for Strategic and International Studies is doing that, and they have estimated the actual true cost of this war, including damage to facilities and replacement of aircraft and munitions, is $50 billion. Half, I mean, double what Pete Hegseth said it was. He did a little math trip there. And Guy says, I think Zelensky held all the cards and was close to beating Russia when Trump tried to humiliate him and in the White House. Could I have been right? Ukraine is winning this war. Even though Trump yesterday came out after his phone call with his love buddy, Vladimir Putin, and said Ukraine is is already a defeated force in this war. Somebody better tell the Ukrainian army because they're kicking ass, taking names, and drinking Russia's coffee, and their coffee sucks. So they're just kicking ass and taking names. They're producing 1,000 drones per day in Ukraine. That's just a generic fly into you kill. Russian soldiers aren't getting killed by bullets anymore or artillery. They are being killed by individual drones. Drones are now the bullets of the future war. So nobody's losing on that side. All right, Wajeeh, we finished early. Let's let these people go have a nice Sunday. If you are watching this on YouTube, which we are still having an upload problem on YouTube, I have to download it, then I have to upload it. You are watching it. Come watch it live on Substack, and you can watch the replay on Substack at malcolmnance.substack.com. Wajeeh Lion also produces a companion version of this, which does come up on YouTube. Watch that. Subscribe to Wajeeh on YouTube and myself. Subscribe to us on Substack. I am still trying to get to 100,000 followers. Some algorithm change took away 500 followers, or the war just got boring for people. I don't know which one it is. If you can, support our work. Please subscribe. It's $7 a month or whatever it is. And give us a hand because we're doing this work for you so that you can now go and have a nice, wonderful day. If you are watching on Substack, I will be coming up on Substack and YouTube on the Save America Movement podcast with Steve Schmidt in about 20 minutes. So, anyway, I will get back to you. Oh, I'm sorry, not 20 minutes, 1 hour and 20 minutes away. I will be seeing you. It's 11 o'clock Eastern time. I'm sorry. I'm still on crazy jet lag time. I'm in the UK and it's 2 o'clock almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. All right, Roger.
If you ever find the red dispatch bag, steal it for me, okay? The
Which
red
dispatch bag?
the UK, you know, the prime minister, how they walk with
Oh,
the
the dispatch box. It's a box, the
Yeah,
red box. I
yeah.
saw one yesterday.
If you find one, grab one for me.
Okay, will do. They're those secretarial boxes. All right. Thank you for coming to today's edition of Black Man Spot. I will put up the scheduled version for tomorrow so that you can all see that. And who knows? We might be at war or we might be at peace. So who never knows? So again, I will see you in an hour and a half on the what do you call it? The Who's It for the What's It with Save America movement. Take care, Waj. See you later.
Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.